As with all of my videos, this video contains themes of abduction, rape and murder, which may be upsetting to some viewers. Sarah Everard was born in Surrey in June 1987, the youngest child of Jeremy Everard, a professor at the University of York, and Susan, a charity worker. Her siblings are Katie and James. Sarah attended Fulford School in York. Between 2005 and 2008, she studied human geography at St Cuthbert's Society, a constituent college of Durham University, graduating with a 2:1 degree. After her graduation, Sarah relocated to London and began working in marketing, later becoming an accounts manager. She lived in Brixton, only a few streets away from her boyfriend, Josh. In early 2021, Sarah was offered a job as a marketing executive at the Flipside Group in Holborn, telling friends that she was excited about starting this new chapter in her life. On January 6, 2021, the British government imposed the third and final lockdown. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the British public were urged to remain at home unless absolutely necessary, and mingling with people from other households was forbidden. Despite this, on March 3, 2021, nearly 2 months into lockdown, Sarah visited a friend on Leithwaite Road, near Clapham Common. En route to her friend's house, Sarah visited a nearby Sainsbury's store, buying a bottle of wine. She left the friend's house at 9 p.m. and began walking home. She was captured on CCTV at 9:15 p.m. CCTV tracked Sarah as she walked home, during which time she phoned her boyfriend Josh and arranged to meet him the following day. At 9:28 p.m, CCTV recorded Sarah walking down Cavendish Road. The walk from Leithwaite Road to Brixton was around 2.5 miles, taking around 50 minutes to complete. The next day, March 4, 2021, Sarah failed to attend a work meeting. Her boyfriend attempted to contact her, to no avail. At 8 p.m. that day, he reported Sarah missing to the police. Police began distributing CCTV images of Sarah from March 3rd. She had been wearing navy blue trousers with a white diamond pattern, a green raincoat, orange and turquoise trainers, and a beanie. She had also been carrying her headphones and mobile phone, the latter of which was now switched off. Examining hundreds of hours of CCTV in London, police analysed the known CCTV footage of Sarah to try and reconstruct her route home. A camera from an estate agency on the corner of Sarah's street revealed that she had not walked past, meaning she did not return home. Interviews with Sarah's friends gave no indication that there were any issues in her personal life that would have prompted her to run away. Sarah's family travelled to London from York to aid with the search, putting up posters and distributing flyers to spread the news of her disappearance, in the hopes of generating as many potential leads as possible. Police appealed for anyone to come forward with CCTV or dashcam footage. Detective Chief Inspector Simon Harding, who was working on the investigation, said that Sarah's decision not to use public transport or get a lift home may have been influenced by contemporary COVID-19 restrictions. Alternatively, because Sarah was a physically active woman, the opportunity for a walk and fresh air may have been more appealing. Plus, it was something she had done many times before. CCTV footage established that Sarah had walked this very route and was roughly 1 mile away from her house when she was last seen, but there was no evidence to suggest that she had made it any further. On March 6th, police released CCTV footage and stills of Sarah in the hopes that they would jog someone's memory. Thankfully, police did not have to wait long for any leads, as CCTV from a passing bus showed Sarah talking to a man on the side of the road. A white car, believed to be a Vauxhall Astra or Crossland, was parked nearby with its warning lights flashing. Sarah and the man appeared to be talking. The timing of this sighting was 9:34 p.m. 4 minutes later, at 9:38 p.m, dashcam footage from a passing car showed the same white car, with the front doors now open. With these new leads, police needed to identify the man as soon as possible. On March the 8th, Sarah's boyfriend Josh posted this on Facebook, quote, "Sarah is still missing. Please share this post to help us to find her. Today more than ever, we miss our strong, beautiful friend." By March the 9th, search efforts had intensified. Drains along the A205 were being searched, as well as ponds in Clapham Common, in the hopes of finding human remains. That night, police issued an update. A man had been arrested in his home in Deal, Kent. Using dashcam footage and the car's registration number, police traced the vehicle to a car hire firm in Dover. Staff at the firm handed over the details of the person who had rented the car, along with 2 mobile phone numbers provided. When police ran the numbers through the police database, their hearts must have sunk when they learned that one of the numbers belonged to a serving Metropolitan Police officer and firearms officer with the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Branch, 48-year-old Wayne Cousins. Cousins was arrested on suspicion of kidnap and a separate incident of indecent exposure. A woman in her mid-30s was arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender, but was subsequently released on bail and faced no criminal charges. Assistant Commissioner Nick Fgrave addressed the press, quote, "The arrest this evening is a serious and significant development. We will continue to work with all speed on this investigation, but the fact that the arrested man is a serving Metropolitan Police officer is both shocking and deeply disturbing. I understand there will be significant public concern, but it is essential that the investigative team are given the time and space to continue their work." The police investigation established that Cousins had left London in the hours after Sarah went missing, and was in Tilmanston, Kent, in the early hours of March the 4th. By 8:30 a.m. the same day, he had returned the hire car. Police were granted permission to conduct an emergency interview without the presence of Cousins' solicitor. In his interview, Cousins claimed never to have met Sarah, and only knew about her through the news. Around 40 minutes prior to his arrest, Cousins tried to wipe the data from his phone by initiating a factory reset. He told police that he had been using the services of a sex worker in Folkestone and ran up a considerable debt with a gang of Romanian traffickers who threatened to harm him and his family unless he delivered them another woman as compensation for their lost earnings. Cousins even gave officers a description of these men and the roundabout where he handed Sarah over to this gang. But who is Wayne Cousins? Cousins was born on December the 20th, 1972, in Dover, Kent. After completing his education at Castlemount School, which closed in 2009 and has since been demolished, he worked as a mechanic in the family garage. In 2002, he enlisted as a private in the Territorial Army, specifically the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, during which time he unsuccessfully applied 3 times to become a police officer. Cousins joined Kent Police as a special constable in 2006, and 1 year later he was discharged from the Territorial Army for failing to meet training requirements. In late 2010, Cousins began the vetting process for joining the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, a special police force responsible for providing law enforcement and security at nuclear sites, and for security of materials in transit within the United Kingdom. In early 2011, he resigned from Kent Police to work full-time as an authorised firearms officer for the Civil Nuclear Constabulary. In September 2020, Cousins joined the Metropolitan Police as a constable and firearms officer. In February 2020, he was assigned to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Branch, the division of the Metropolitan Police responsible for guarding government and diplomatic premises. As of March 2021, he was a married father of 2 children and lived in Deal, Kent, 80 miles from his workplace. On March the 10th, Police began searching a wooded area near Ashford and a house in Deal, where the family cars were seized. Dog units were deployed and derelict buildings searched, with the assistance of a police helicopter. Although Sarah's body had not been found, Wayne Couzens was rearrested, this time on suspicion of murder. Police learnt that in 2019 he had purchased a small area of woodland off Frid Lane. As stated earlier, Couzens tried to wipe the data from his phone, but police were able to retrieve said data. Analysing this data, police intensified their search efforts in this area. Just before 5 p.m. that day, police recovered human remains in this area. They were identified as those of Sarah Everard. She was identified via her dental records. Her family gave this statement, quote, "Our beautiful daughter Sarah was taken from us, and we are appealing for any information that will help solve this terrible crime. Sarah was bright and beautiful, a wonderful daughter and sister. She was kind and thoughtful, caring and dependable. She always put others first and had the most amazing sense of humour. She was strong and principled, and a shining example to us all. We are very proud of her, and she brought so much joy to our lives. We would like to thank our friends and family for all their support during this awful time, and we would especially like to thank Sarah's friends, who are working tirelessly to help." Members of the public laid flowers and left tributes to Sarah Everard, and this crime led to a sense of disgust that a serving Metropolitan Police officer could have been involved in such a heinous crime. Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge, visited Clapham Common to pay her respects. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said, quote, "Like the whole country, my thoughts are with Sarah and her family. We must work fast to find the answers to this horrifying crime." Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, said, quote, "I can only imagine the pain and terrible agonies that Sarah's family and friends are going through right now. My thoughts and prayers are with them. All women and girls should be able to feel safe on the streets at all times." As their investigation continued, police learned that on March 2nd, 2021, Couzens began his shift at 7 p.m. and finished at 7 a.m. the next morning. After completing his shift, he collected the white Vauxhall Crossland from the car hire firm in Dover at 4:45 p.m. Just over 3 hours later, at 8 p.m, he was captured on CCTV buying hairbands in a Tesco store in Kensington. The next known sighting of Couzens was the dashcam footage at 9:34 p.m, showing Couzens and Sarah talking at the side of the road. Detectives theorised that he had used his warrant card to detain Sarah and arrested her on suspicion of breaching COVID-19 restrictions. After his arrest, Couzens was detained in HMP Belmarsh in Thamesmead, where he was monitored every 15 minutes, as is customary for any potentially vulnerable prisoners. On his second night in custody, it was reported that he had been found unconscious in his cell, with a self-inflicted head injury. Police also announced that the Independent Office for Police Conduct, or IOPC, would be investigating whether there had been an appropriate response when it was reported that Couzens had committed an act of indecent exposure in a McDonald's restaurant only 3 days before he killed Sarah Everard. The incident was recorded on CCTV and subsequently reported to police. A vigil for Sarah was intended to be held, but police said it could be in breach of COVID-19 restrictions. Assistant Commissioner Nick Fgrave said, quote, "I know that the public feel hurt and angry about what has happened, and those are sentiments that I share personally. I also recognise the wider concerns that are being raised quite rightly about the safety of women in public spaces in London, and also elsewhere in the country. The organisation, and the men and women in it, remain committed to protecting Londoners, wherever they are in this city. That commitment is undiminished by these events, and, if anything, that commitment is strengthened by these tragic circumstances." The vigil was scheduled for Saturday the 13th of March, but Reclaim the Streets, responsible for organising the vigil, reported that police had refused to help them organise it safely, and, in accordance with COVID-19 protocols, police said that the organisers would be liable for a £10,000 fine each if the vigil happened. Consequently, the vigil was cancelled. Despite this, some people did go to Clapham Common to pay their respects to Sarah and raise awareness of violence against women. The atmosphere was originally calm, but police arrived and attempted to disperse the crowd. Police and people in attendance soon clashed. 6 people were arrested for public order offences and breaching of the Coronavirus Act 2020. Prime Minister Boris Johnson was, quote, deeply disturbed by footage of events, and Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, repeatedly called for Cressida Dick, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, to resign. Dick declined to do so and dismissed criticism of the police response. Sadiq Khan directed Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, responsible for overseeing the police, in investigating the police's handling of the vigil. The review, published on March the 30th, 2021, concluded that the police had, quote, reacted appropriately and were not heavy-handed and were, quote, justified in their stance, in accordance with COVID-19 regulations, stating that the risks of transmission were, quote, too great to ignore. The report also said, quote, condemnation of the Met's actions within mere hours of the vigil, including from people in positions of authority, was unwarranted, showed a lack of respect for public servants facing a complex situation, and undermined public confidence in policing based on very limited evidence. While in custody, Cousins was admitted to hospital following a second head injury. Hours later, he was charged with kidnap and murder. Investigations continued, and police were in various places, searching for clues. Senior coroner Patricia Harding was unable to establish a medical cause of death. However, she did confirm that no natural illness, which could have caused or contributed to Sarah's death, was found, adding that further tests would be undertaken to establish how she had died. It was later established that Sarah had been raped at some point and had been strangled to death, probably with Cousins' police belt. On May the 22nd, 2021, nearly 3 months after her death, Sarah Everard's funeral was held at Heslington Church in York. On June the 8th, 2021, Wayne Cousins pleaded guilty to kidnap and rape, and accepted responsibility for Sarah Everard's death. Pending medical reports into his mental health when he killed Sarah, he did not plead guilty to murder. Cousins' guilty plea meant that Sarah's family had been spared the burden of a trial. During Cousins' first court appearance, Sarah's family watched remotely as Cousins, who appeared to have a wound on his head, rocked back and forth. He spoke only to confirm his name, age, and address. Although Cousins' guilty plea spared the Everard family the burden of a trial, the true extent of what happened to Sarah Everard would be laid bare in court. On February the 10th, 2021, Cousins purchased on Amazon a police standard issue handcuff key with double locking pin. The prosecution argued that this would have made Sarah think that he was an on-duty officer. The prosecution also insisted that the hairbands he purchased on the day of Sarah's murder were for the purposes of kidnap and rape, to be used as restraints or as part of a sex act. They also argued that Cousins drove around London searching for a lone young woman to kidnap and rape. He then noticed Sarah Everard. Using his warrant card, he falsely arrested her and placed her into the back of the hire car. He proceeded to drive to Dover, where he was caught on CCTV on North Military Road. He placed Sarah into his own car, in which he continued to where he killed and disposed of her. Prosecutor Tom Little QC said, quote, the fact that she had been to a friend's house for dinner at the start of the early 2021 lockdown made her more vulnerable to, and more likely to submit to, an accusation that she had acted in breach of the COVID regulations in some way. A female passenger in the car that passed Sarah Everard and Wayne Couzens saw Sarah being arrested. Little said, quote, "Sarah Everard was compliant, with her head down, and did not appear to be arguing." It emerged that Couzens would wear his police belt even when not on duty. It also transpired that he had set up a profile on a dating website, which contained numerous lies about himself, and how he had used an escort service. Phone analysis proved that Couzens had been in the wooded area where Sarah was killed, between 11:53 p.m. to 12:57 a.m. It is believed that he raped Sarah before driving back to Dover after 1 a.m. At 2:34 a.m, he was captured on CCTV at the BP Dover South Services garage, buying soft drinks. Sarah was likely dead at this point. At 7:30 a.m, Couzens was seen on North Military Road, and the hired Vauxhall was seen driving away. 45 minutes later, he was seen at a Costa Cafe, buying hot drinks and a snack. At 8:30 a.m, he returned the hire car, having driven more than 300 miles in it. At 11:05 a.m, he was captured on CCTV, buying a petrol can and filling it up in a BP station. It is believed that this petrol was used to burn Sarah's body and destroy evidence. After filling his car, he drove to a McDonald's. Couzens attempted to burn Sarah's body in a refrigerator before dumping her remains into a pond in Hodes Wood, where he had owned a plot of land since 2019. A fire was reported in Hodes Wood, where his car was seen. The fire was consistent with where he had burnt Sarah's body. Later that day, Couzens threw Sarah's phone into a river in Sandwich, but a SIM card and a piece of blood, found on a rear passenger seat, were a match for Sarah Everard's DNA, meaning he was present when Sarah died and involved in her death. His semen was found on the back seat. The following afternoon, he called a vet to arrange an appointment for his dog. Couzens also called in sick to work, saying he was suffering from stress. At 2 p.m. that day, however, he was captured on CCTV buying 2 large green bags before travelling to Hodes Wood, where he is believed to have moved Sarah's body using these bags. One day after this, he emailed his supervisor, saying he no longer wanted to carry a firearm. Later that day, he ordered a 2x2 metre tarpaulin and a cargo net from Amazon. On March the 7th, Couzens took his family on a day out to Hodes Wood, allowing his children to play near where Sarah Everard's body had been deposited. He was scheduled to work on March the 8th, but failed to turn in for duty, saying he felt unwell. By March the 9th, police had enough evidence linking Couzens to Sarah's disappearance, and by 7:50 p.m. that day, he was in custody. In July 2021, Metropolitan Police announced that in June 2015, a man, believed to have been Wayne Couzens, was seen in Dover driving naked below the waist, although Couzens was not arrested or questioned. Shortly after this revelation, it was announced that the Independent Office of Police Conduct, or IOPC, would investigate whether this information, as well as the allegation of indecent exposure in McDonald's, only days before Sarah Everard's murder, had been handled properly by Kent Police. After his guilty plea, Couzens was dismissed from the Metropolitan Police. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick was in court alongside Sarah Everard's family. The presiding judge, Lord Justice Fulford, was considering a whole life term, meaning that if this sentence were imposed, Couzens would never be eligible for parole. On July the 9th, 2021, Couzens pleaded guilty to the murder of Sarah Everard. Carolyn Oakley, a Crown Prosecution Service Specialist Prosecutor in the Special Crime Division, said, quote, "Today, Wayne Couzens pleaded guilty to the murder of Sarah Everard. This plea is as a result of hard work by the prosecution team. The police should be commended for their thorough and tireless investigation into Sarah's disappearance. Wayne Couzens lied to the police when he was arrested and, to date, has refused to comment. We still do not know what drove him to commit this appalling crime against a stranger. Today is not the day for hearing the facts about what happened to Sarah. Today is a day to remember Sarah, and our thoughts remain with her family and friends. Cousins' sentence hearing lasted 2 days. The prosecution argued that the severity of the crime warranted a whole life order. During sentencing, Sarah Everard's family addressed Cousins, although he refused to acknowledge any of them. Susan Everard, Sarah's mother, said that her daughter had, quote, spent her last hours on earth with the very worst of humanity. She lost her life because Wayne Cousins wanted to satisfy his perverted desires. She added that she and her family were undergoing tremendous mental suffering, that Wayne Cousins, quote, repulsed her, and that she was outraged that he had, quote, masqueraded as a policeman. Susan said that Sarah had wanted to marry and become a mother, dreams that had been cruelly destroyed. Jeremy Everard said he thought about what had happened to his daughter all the time, saying, quote, the impact of what you have done will never end. A father wants to protect his children and fix everything, and you have deliberately, and with premeditation, stopped my ability to do that. Sarah's sister Katie was overcome with emotion as she stated how Cousins had treated Sarah as if she meant nothing and discarded her like rubbish. Cousins' barrister, Jim Sturman QC, told the court that his client felt, quote, genuine remorse for his actions. He argued that a whole life order was not appropriate, as Cousins had accepted responsibility for the offence, and the fact that he had only killed one person as opposed to more than one, under which circumstances a judge may consider a whole life sentence. Sturman argued that Cousins should receive a life sentence with a minimum term of 30 years, allowing him to become eligible for parole in his 80s. On September the 30th, 2021, Cousins was summoned back to court to face sentencing. During sentencing, the presiding judge, Lord Justice Fulford, remarked that the murder had been planned thoroughly and meticulously, adding that Cousins had spent at least a month travelling to and from London to research how best to commit the murder. Fulford described the seriousness of the case as, quote, exceptionally high, and consequently warranted a whole life order. Addressing Cousins, he told him, quote, Wayne Cousins, you kidnapped, raped and murdered Sarah Everard, having long planned a violent sexual assault on a yet-to-be-selected victim, who you intended to coerce into your custody. You have irretrievably damaged the lives of Sarah Everard's family and friends. Mrs. Everard devastatingly referred to how the wider world has lost its appeal for her, and, I would add, no doubt for many others who cared for your victim, and Sarah Everard's sister referred to the inescapable reality of the many lives you have ruined. You have eroded the confidence that the public are entitled to have in the police forces of England and Wales. It is critical that every subject in this country can trust police officers when they encounter them and submit to their authority, which they are entitled to believe is being exercised in good faith. You have utterly betrayed your family. Your wife and children, who, on the evidence, are entirely blameless, will have to live with the ignominy of your dreadful crimes for the rest of their lives. You have very considerably added to the sense of insecurity that many have living in our cities, perhaps particularly women, when travelling by themselves and especially at night. During the moment before your arrest, there was never a moment when you gave the slightest indication of regret, following perhaps the realization of the enormity of the dreadful crimes you had committed. Those consequences are that on the count of murder, you will be imprisoned for life, and the tariff is a whole life order. I have taken into account the offences of kidnapping and rape in reaching that decision, and on those counts, I impose no separate penalty. Take him down. Wayne Cousins, who appeared to be trembling during sentencing, was taken away to begin the rest of his life in prison. Wayne Cousins' sentencing was a landmark event, as it was one of the few occasions when a whole life sentence had been imposed for a crime where terrorism was not involved. Following his sentencing, Cressida Dick addressed the press, apologising on behalf of the Metropolitan Police. After sentencing, Sarah Everard's family gave statements. Her mother, Susan, stated, quote, "I am broken-hearted. She was my precious little girl, our youngest child. The feeling of loss is so great." Sarah's sister Katie said, quote, "I feel like I live in a make-believe world, as if nothing is real. I have to pretend because the thought of not having Sarah forever is too hard to bear. A lifetime now seems like a very long time." Naturally, the fact that a serving Metropolitan Police officer was responsible for the kidnap, rape and murder of an innocent woman meant that there was an investigation into whether previous concerns about Cousins had been properly addressed by Metropolitan Police, and if there had been missed opportunities to prevent the murder from happening. On November the 22nd, 2021, it was announced that a public inquiry led by Lady Ailish Angiolini would be undertaken. Consisting of two parts, the first part of the inquiry was published on February the 29th, 2024. It revealed a criminal history that meant that Wayne Cousins should never have been allowed to join the police. In around the mid-1990s, when he was 23, Cousins was in a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old girl, which constitutes statutory rape. However, this was not reported to police. In 1995, a woman reported that an unidentified man had attempted to kidnap her at knife point in North London. After Cousins' arrest on suspicion of kidnap, the woman contacted police, stating that she recognised him from the pictures in media reports as the man who had attempted to kidnap her. In March 2022, Cousins was arrested and questioned about this offence. In 2003, while serving in the Territorial Army, a woman alleged that Cousins had acted in a, quote, intimidating manner towards her. After Cousins' arrest, the woman recognised him from his mugshot and informed police. However, she chose not to make a statement to make a complaint. In 2004, during his tenure in the Territorial Army, Cousins allegedly showed fellow reservists videos of extreme porn. After his arrest in early 2021, this complaint was reported to Metropolitan Police, and Cousins was arrested in connection with this offence in March 2022. In summer 2004, Cousins exposed himself to a teenage girl, masturbating while driving. The incident was not reported to police at the time, but after Cousins' arrest, the victim reported this to police in late 2021. In March 2022, Cousins was arrested and interviewed about this allegation. Sometime between late 2006 and early 2007, it was alleged that Cousins attempted to rape a woman at an event. Although this was not reported to police at the time, after Cousins' arrest, the woman came forward to allege that he was the same man who had tried to rape her. In March 2022, Cousins was arrested and interviewed in relation to this allegation. In July 2007, having left the Territorial Army, Cousins failed to return equipment and his uniform, for which he was fined £526. He failed to pay the fine or return the equipment and uniform. There were allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault between May 2008 and September 2010. In the case of the sexual harassment allegations, Cousins allegedly left on a young woman's phone images of his erect and semi-erect penis. He was confronted about this but, quote, laughed it off and minimised the seriousness of the situation. The incident was not reported at the time, nor was he arrested or interviewed in regards to this allegation after his imprisonment. In the first of two sexual assault allegations, Cousins made a young woman feel, quote, extremely uncomfortable when he lifted her skirt higher than required, before proceeding to, quote, very slightly pinch her knee. The incident was not reported, nor was Cousins questioned about this later on. In the second sexual assault allegation, while driving home from a social event, Cousins allegedly put his hand underneath a woman's dress, touching her underwear. The incident was not reported. On November the 21st, 2008, Cousins allegedly exposed himself, masturbating in front of a woman while walking in South London. The victim reported this on the same day. Although police attended the scene, they did not take a statement or identify a suspect. After Cousins' arrest in 2021, the woman contacted police, saying he was the suspect. Cousins was arrested and questioned in regards to this offence in March 2022. Also in 2008, Cousins allegedly exposed himself to Magic FM DJ Emma B. She reported the incident to police, but told of how officers laughed at her when she did so. After she saw images of Cousins after his arrest, she recognised him as the perpetrator, and the Metropolitan Police reinvestigated her complaint. Between 2013 and 2014, Cousins committed 2 separate motoring offences on 2 separate occasions, although specifics of these offences are unknown. On June 9, 2015, Cousins allegedly exposed his erect penis while driving a car through Dover town centre. The incident was reported to police the same day, with Cousins identified as the registered keeper of the vehicle involved. However, the investigation did not progress, and Cousins was not questioned about this offence. After his arrest for the kidnap, rape and murder of Sarah Everard, the case was reopened, and in September 2022, he was charged with indecent exposure. In 2023, he pleaded not guilty to the offence. After his arrest for the kidnap, rape and murder of Sarah Everard, details of a WhatsApp message group between Cousins and some work colleagues emerged. Inappropriate and deeply offensive messages were sent by Cousins, making obscene sexual and derogatory remarks about domestic violence victims, as well as discriminatory comments about people's race and ethnicity. These comments were exchanged between March and October 2019. In the summer of 2019, Cousins allegedly sexually assaulted a man in drag in a bar in Kent, with Cousins touching him inappropriately. This led to a confrontation where Cousins told the victim that he was a police officer. He invited the man outside to perform a sex act. The incident was reported after Cousins was arrested in relation to the offences connected to Sarah Everard. In October 2019, Cousins allegedly raped a woman under a bridge in London. The incident was reported to police in March 2020, but the case was closed after police failed to identify a suspect. After images of Cousins were shown in the media, following his arrest for his involvement in Sarah Everard's kidnap and murder, the victim contacted police and identified Cousins as the attacker. He was arrested and interviewed in relation to this offence in March 2022. Between January the 22nd and February the 1st, 2021, Cousins allegedly exposed himself on 2 separate occasions whilst in the drive-thru of a restaurant. Information about these offences emerged after Cousins was investigated over 2 other reports of indecent exposure in mid and late February. Between February the 14th and 27th, 2021, only weeks before he killed Sarah Everard, Cousins allegedly exposed himself on 2 separate occasions in the drive-thru of a McDonald's restaurant in Swanley, Kent. One of the victims recalled how Cousins had exposed his erect penis to her as she turned around to give him food he had ordered at the window, adding how she burst into tears. The incidents were reported to police later that month, and Cousins was identified as a suspect, having used a bank card and been driving his car at the time. No action was taken until after Cousins was arrested for the kidnap, rape and murder of Sarah Everard. After being interviewed in prison about these offences, Cousins was charged with the offences in March 2022. In March 2023, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for both offences. Of course, on March the 3rd, 2021, he kidnapped, raped and murdered Sarah Everard. After his arrest in 2021 in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard, Cousins' electronic devices were seized for analysis. In 2022, a final review of the devices found 19 indecent images of children. In a statement during an interview at HM Prison Belmarsh, Cousins denied having ever downloaded or accessed indecent images of children. In May 2023, the terms of reference for Part 2 of the inquiry was set to look at the, quote, recruitment and vetting of police officers, culture and standards in policing, and measures to help prevent sexually motivated violence against women in public places. The Angiolini inquiry found that Cousins had a reputation among fellow officers for drug abuse, obsession with extreme pornography, and similar offences. He was nicknamed, quote, the rapist, because of his tendency to make female colleagues feel extremely uncomfortable. The Met came under attack not only for their failure to stop Cousins before he killed Sarah Everard, but also for their advice to women in the aftermath of Cousins' sentencing. They advised women who might believe they are being falsely arrested to consider, quote, shouting out to a passerby, running into a house, knocking on the door, waving a bus down, or, if you are in a position to do so, call 999. This statement led to widespread condemnation, with people arguing that this would not have prevented Sarah Everard's murder because Wayne Cousins was a serving police officer with the power to make arrests and could result in women facing charges for resisting arrest. Philip Allott, North Yorkshire Police Fire and Crime Commissioner, faced calls to resign after suggesting similarly, saying that women should familiarise themselves with the law and be, quote, streetwise about when they can and can't be arrested. Accused of victim blaming, Allott initially refused to resign, stating that he wanted to, quote, rebuild trust and confidence in his work as Commissioner. On the afternoon of October the 14th, 2021, he announced his resignation and apologised for his remarks. In October 2021, shortly after his sentencing, it was announced that Cousins was applying for leave to appeal against his sentence. In July 2022, Cousins' appeal against his whole life sentence was upheld by the Court of Appeal. This video is dedicated to Sarah Everard, the centre of this horrific case. Fly high, Sarah, and rest in peace.